YouTube picks that up. It should be set to visible though, I guess. Want to do this public. And we are live. Okay, great.
There we go.
So, welcome everybody to today's episode of Coffee, Keks, and Kriegsspiel. And as you can see, the revolution was successful. Marshall has been displaced, and we have taken over the IKS. No, just kidding. Marshall is on a trip, on a holiday trip, so he's taken off today, so to say, and I'm taking over for today just. And I have Paul here with me, who ran yesterday's Open Saturday game. I'm not quite sure what the title of that game was, because I was on a trip myself, so I couldn't attend, unfortunately. But it sounded very interesting, and in addition to that, it was your masterpiece, so to say. We have this what we call the Master Umpire Academy, which is if you want to call it a certification program, so to say, for umpires who really take it seriously and want to potentially represent the IKS on conventions and conferences and so forth. Of course, everybody who is interested can just join the IKS and umpire games, can umpire games on various different Discord servers or in person or wherever they want to. But in addition to that, we have this sort of program, which is a little bit of a guided, assisted program for those who want to become official master umpires. So, Paul, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, great. Tell us a little bit about the scenario of yesterday and how the game went.
Sure. The scenario was a corner of the Polish campaign that is often not talked about, and I personally love these battles that the conventional narrative doesn't really discuss. What happened was the Germans overwhelmed the Polish defenses because the Polish army had actually tried to defend the borders, and they had expected the French and the British to help them. And there was a lot of guarantees made or promises made that were not kept, because once the Germans crossed the border, the British and the French did nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So they were quickly overwhelmed. But there was one army, and this was early enough in the war that the Germans' machine hadn't really come together as well as it was known for later. So there was one entire Polish army that was essentially missed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the army of the Poznan. And the Germans attacked east and they attacked south, but they kind of went right around this one army. And so this one army's opportunity was to create an offensive that would basically slow the German progress down, while the politicians tried to get the French and the British to do something. So that was the context of the battle. And there was a very specific action that was the high watermark of the Polish offensive, which was around a town called Orzorkau. And this was a two divisions on the Polish side fighting one and division plus a bit on the German side, mostly infantry, very straightforward fight, but it had some complexity because of the terrain. So I really liked this scenario. I did the research on it, and it was flexible enough for a live Saturday, because live Saturdays are a multivariable equation.
Yes.
So it allowed for a lot of flexibility, because I actually was able to build things in that allowed for 4 players or 30 players, which you kind of have to prepare for on an open Saturday. So I think the game went very well in terms of the mechanics of it. We got started in 45 minutes. We had 13-minute turns, which is a hallmark of a smoothly running game.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, the feedback was positive. On the gameplay, of course, everybody had their disappointing moments during the game. So everybody had a lot of fun, I think.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Do you by chance have the module at hand or a map you can share that we can take a look at?
I do. Is it possible for you to play that video? Because the after action review is we could just play that. We could play that if you want,
Yes.
or I have the module.
Let's see if I go over to that. I don't know if I can.
This is Umpire Lafondios.
There we go.
And I'm happy to share the after-action review for the Battle of Bzura, Poland, 1939. An open Saturday battle.
That's fresh out of editing this morning,
quickly and get right into the action.
Get that up.
We had experienced commanders and some new players, and universally the players
If not, I have
shared
the module.
that they enjoyed the
I
day.
can share my screen.
Let's see what happened. The German invasion of Poland in September 1939 quickly overwhelmed the Polish military. Trying to defend the borders, the Polish were quickly bypassed, and the situation was dire by September 14th. Hoping for help from the British and French, the Polish High Command wanted to keep Warsaw free, and the army of the Poznan, circled here in green, was intact. It conducted an offensive operation along the Bzura River. 12 divisions pushed the German line back, seeking to break it and forcing the Germans to send reinforcements. The German 8th Army Corps was overextended, and the German 13th was ordered into the line to stabilize it. Our players are recreating the high water mark of this Polish offensive. The Polish 17th and 25th Divisions attacked toward the town of Ozorkow, looking to break the German line. The German 17th Division had been ordered into the line, and while moving north, ran into this attack. In a meeting engagement, they clashed. Historically, the Polish 17th drove the German 17th out of Ozorko. We'll see how our players handle the same scenario. The order of...
Okay, minimize that. Okay, so I went up to about 1 minute 40. So we had the map there and the general description of the scenario. Now I think the order of battle is starting then the video. I don't think we want to watch the 10-minute video, but that will be uploaded, I guess, to your YouTube channel.
Yeah, right after the show, I'll upload it. But so that's the general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for everybody,
and I have the module up. I can stream the tabletop simulator.
Yeah,
I can
please
show
do
you
so.
What
please
happened.
do so. Sure. So for everybody who wants to watch the full video, then after the show, make sure to check out Umpire Lafondios. It's called, right? Your channel.
That's right, and I'll have it in the Discord as well on the AAR channel.
Awesome. Okay, and I'll make sure to blow this up. Okay, we can see the map now.
Okay. So you see the dispositions. We'll just use white here. What Great Gold did is he made basically a large group, a main body on the western side of the map. And what you see here, there's two rivers that come down that basically split this. So you have two main avenues of approach that the Poles can use if they win the battle. So he chose the West Avenue, and he created a large battle group on that side. And on this side, he has a small battle group that was going to basically screen to ensure there was no attack north, and was going to try to basically keep the Germans busy on that side of the river. Alternatively, in the south, we'll flip it over to a red color here. The Germans had the 82nd Regiment, which was part of another division that was already dug in here. And KB, who was the commander on this side, decided to actually move up in three and basically make three defensive positions, one in the wood line here, one in Ozorkow, and then to maintain the 82nd here. So that was his plan. And he had decided that this line he would then switch his artillery and shift the machine gun battalion to where the hottest part of the battle was. So this was the setup for the beginning of the game. So how's that? Any questions on that one?
Not yet. Please continue.
Okay. Yeah. So the battle went pretty straightforward in terms of this big battle group came down and they hit this group down here on the south. And Great Gold himself was with that group, so he was in direct command. And one of the mechanics of the game that we used was that they were allowed to essentially co-locate, representing radio traffic, if they were in 3 kilometers of each other. So in the background, what the players weren't seeing was that there was a gridded system Each of these squares was 1 kilometer. So if they were within 3 kilometers of each other or so, then I let them co-locate. So there was a lot of communication as a result on this side of the map. And then they had no communication on this side. So this group came down south, they split into 2.
And each block, what is a block representing?
Each block is a battalion.
Okay.
So this system is based on Sam Mustafa's Rommel system, and so each block is a battalion. So the Germans took the first battle group there, the second battle group here, and their command and the recon here, and then the recon unit went up here to try to determine what was going on. So this was kind of stage 1 of the battle. And what happened here is the Germans actually did a very nice job. They began setting demolitions in that bridge. And here's a great Kriegsspiel moment, because the passing of the order to set demolitions, the intent was only to set demolitions on the bridge but not blow it. But it set in place an engineering process that's part of the game system. And that engineering process would blow the bridge after 4 turns unless it was stopped. So this was a bit of a game mechanic, a bit of a communication bit through umpire to player and all that, of course. As umpires, we make mistakes, but we're never wrong. So therefore, you'll see later that the bridge was actually blown, though the Germans didn't intend for it to be blown. Some of the bridges, if you notice over here, I'll point out over here. So these 2 bridges, one is actually blown and one is not. So these are actually game pieces that the players can then destroy the bridges. So the bridges can either be repaired or destroyed within the game, which is kind of a fun mechanic in the game. So at this point, the battle starts going very poorly for the 82nd. They're just overwhelmed, right? The Polish commanders use coordinated attack. They're using combined arms, so they actually take the they have these tankettes, which has a little bit of an armor shock action, and they bring those forward. And so they're doing a really nice job of reducing this regiment down here to the south. And the regimental commander, and you can hear his voice actually in the video, saying he realized that he was outmatched. And here's where the radio communication got interesting. They were able to communicate. The German players were able to communicate all over here by radio. So they had the same kind of cohesion of perspective that Great Gold had with his folks over here. So in fact, the radio communication was working well in the east for the Germans, was working well in the west for the Poles, and as a result, all of the attacks were able to be coordinated in each respective domain. So what ended up happening is this group here, Sheephead was the commander. He came down and decided to raid Ozarkal. He was actually wanting to knock this bridge out as well. And so we had this funny moment, and it was a funny part of the AAR, and it generated quite a bit of laughter, where we had the Germans trying to blow the bridge and the Poles trying to blow the bridge at the same time. So they were fighting over the same objective, which was a miscommunication, of course. But as a result of that raid, they did quite a bit of damage to the units here in town. That bridge ended up being blown, and it came as a real surprise to the German command group. And so we talked a little bit about that. So that was that was just a miscommunication bit.
And objectives
at this point.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead, yeah.
The objectives wise, were the basic objectives for the teams pointed out in the briefing, or did the teams formulate the objectives?
Yeah, there was a 10-minute, and I'll make these public as well. There was a 10-minute German briefing and a 10-minute Polish briefing and a 10-minute umpire briefing. And so this was part of the mechanics of the live Saturday.
So you did
one of the
them
things
as videos as well, right?
Their videos, yeah. So the very first thing that everybody did, we took three minutes, and I hosted this on a separate server so that I was able to use roles. And as people went in, I assigned them to their side. And the instruction was, go watch the video first. So the minute you entered a planning channel lit up and then a text channel lit up for discussion, and then there was a video available. You'd go to that and you'd watch 10 minutes of video. So the very first thing that all the players got was an orientation on the mission, so that the beginnings of the video you just played, as well as the rule set, but it was all made to seamlessly look like a briefing.
Mhm.
So they were being briefed on the rules by their commander, essentially. So the idea being, rather than saying these are the rules and this is the mission, it's like it was all one experience.
That's great. How was
And
that
so at the
perceived by the
11-minute
players?
mark, they liked it. I mean, I think it was perceived very positively. And the best thing about it was that they went into the planning channel, and the only thing they had to do in the planning channel was to task organize their players.
Mhm.
And the reason for that, as you know, is that if you set an order of battle where you have 3 commanders for a side, just making an example, and 5 show up, there's a big scramble to figure out what the roles are. Likewise, if 2 show up, you have to figure out what to do with that empty command. So what I did in this case, and I'll take you down and show you on the bottom
Mhm.
part of the map, is there was actually, this doesn't show up very well, but there was actually an extra division for each side. So if a large number of players showed up, we could actually throw 2 extra divisions in there. So that's how I could get up to 30 roles. And at the top here, you see command roles, and these were extra command pieces. So if extra players would show up, they could actually be thrown into the game. So the
Mhm.
idea would be that there was really battalions and commanders, and all the planning had to be was to designate how many battalions per commander. So this commander would get 2 plus artillery, this commander would get 4, etc. And so the idea for the planning would be that the it's really the players doing the organization of the order of battle for the umpires in a way that they wanted to do it in accordance with their plan. So that large battle group that Great Gold created in the West was a result of him having 5 players and him organizing it that way. So there was actually 7 command slots originally in his historical order of battle. He only had 5 players, so we eliminated 2 of those, and he played with 5. So it's just a little, it's a little Kriegsspiel technique that takes advantage of the player's attention, but also it just takes into account that we just don't know how many players are going to show. And when you lock in an order of battle, it's going to create a very awkward situation as you try to figure out what's going on. So that's how I handled that. Okay. So the game essentially ended with the commander, the German forces being hard pressed, and he tried to escape down here, and he hadn't done a reconnaissance for that bridge, and that bridge was out. So he basically got pinned down here, and then there was an artillery group that he tried to pull into these fields over here. This battle group came down, destroyed that artillery. This battle group came down and attacked the bridge, and this battle group came down and there was a bridge there as well, and they came across there, right? So basically, the entire Polish west, just swept down this way, and then they ended up coming up in here. The Germans did a nice job, however, of pushing this raid back out. So they did KB did an excellent combined arms attack. He used airstrikes. They did have air assets, and he pushed that raid out. And so, in fact, in the end, they ended up stabilizing the line on this side, but they didn't have any contact with the 82nd, and he actually this Western unit, and he actually said in the end that he didn't know what was going on over there, and that was because of the radio contact. After they destroyed the artillery over here, took that out of play, this group here then came in there and destroyed the remainder of those units there. And that was the end of the scenario. And the reason it was the end of the scenario is that what Great Gold had done was created an avenue here that follow-on Polish forces could come in. And then by attacking here, he had actually secured that. So there was no way that German forces in the east could come in and impede that. And the issue historically was that though the Germans were outnumbered and hard pressed, they fell back. And they kept their line contiguous, and so they didn't actually break. In this scenario, it was a decisive victory for Great Gold because he actually broke the German line, which would have allowed more Polish units to stream through, which would have created a problem for the Germans because they would have had to pull units from other sectors and slow down the reduction of the in Warsaw. So it was a great it was Great Gold's it was a fine moment for him. But KB did a nice job with his side as well.
Okay, great. So let's talk a little bit about you adopting elements of the Rommel rule set.
Sure.
We talked a little bit about that on a previous episode regarding system design, but how did you approach it all, and what did you find useful to integrate in the Kriegsspiel system?
What's interesting about looking at rule sets that are designed for tabletop gaming is they're really designed to create friction that makes up for the fact that you have a god's eye view of the board. So a lot of Sam Mustafa's design is using techniques that introduces a slowing of movement, a slowing of the orders, so that you have this back and forth struggle between two players that can see everything. We've actually taken care of that issue with our Fog of War using umpires, and so a lot of the mechanics of the rules around how orders are given can be actually set aside. So, but what was immensely useful was the gridded system, which had been play tested by Mustafa's group thoroughly. So the grid system, the battalion system, so the orders of battle, and then the combat resolution were all mechanics that work very, very well and very fast, right? So that is a known and tested thing. And I think Kriegsspiel umpires, in my experience, tend to spend a lot of time thinking about combat resolution. Well, I just took that right off the shelf. I can stop that stream there. Okay. And so
Are you still with us? No, you are not. Okay. Please hold the line, everybody. We wait for Paul to return. But that is, as we're waiting for him, a very good point, I think, for everybody who wants to build a new system, right? It's game design in general, but also Kriegsspiel specifically, is look at other games, look at other systems that have been designed before, that have been tested thoroughly, and just look for aspects you like of those games. It's the same when I approach board game design. I too, and that actually, if you ever participate in any game design workshop, that will be a thing the teachers tell you. Go to the games you like, or look what games are available on a certain topic. Look how they approach certain aspects you want to represent mechanically, and then just sort of copy elements of that. That's how game design basically works. There is no original genius thought. Everything has been thought before. So go out there, grab the resources you can, and then build a new system on that foundation. And Paul is back, so please go ahead.
I was thrown into the gray zone. So and the point you just made is an excellent one. So I took those whole cloth, and that was and the benefit of that is there are hundreds of these scenarios and the orders of battle already done out there on the internet. So it reduces research time. I then had to look at how we do combat and how we play these games, which is around command and control, and break it into our 3 levels of command. So you have people who are tactically fighting. People are moving brigade level units around, and the higher level CICs. And that became where I spent all my time looking at the special orders, because the way the system works is that you create the effect of combined arms by giving special orders that really represent the dedication of resources that are the soft skills. So like engineers are a great example, air power, transportation, reorganizing units, etc. And so breaking those special orders into the levels is unique to Kriegsspiel. And so that's really the mashup portion of it. And so I hypothesized this, and I took it to a battle and a play-by-post. And so one of the things that worked very well is I did the play-by-post with an eye for how can I adapt this to a live game eventually. And as I did 3 different play-by-post games, I started throwing out things that just naturally slowed down
Mhm.
resolution. And so there was a portion of the orders that created a confusing modifier situation, and there was a portion of communication that didn't work. So I just really just kept slimming it down without losing the essence of the special orders. So by the time we got to the game with Bazura, uh, which the official title is Poland 1939 was one element, but it was the third day of the Battle of Bazura
Mhm.
is the way to think about it. So by the time we got there, I had actually tested our Kriegsspiel command and control systems about a dozen times.
That's great. Yeah, that is a very, very important part, I think, of system design, and yeah, well, a foundation of success, I think. One thing I would like to come back to is the communication aspect you just mentioned again. And you said, well, of course there is a radio, which is something we usually don't have in most of our systems, as they are covering Napoleonics, American Civil War, and what have you. We also do have some other modern systems, of course. Otto's, Carter's, Whisper has a contemporary system, and so forth. How do you think does that change the way players approach the game, or maybe even the problem to solve? Does that change their behavior?
A mix. I think there's my concern about radio, there's kind of 3 elements to the radio problem, if you will. My concern about it was that it become a tea party, as we like to call it, where all the commanders just sit and chit chat. And what's been really and that concern didn't manifest itself at all, either in the play-by-post games or on this live one. The commanders use the radio channel, if you will, to really give radio messages. And so there's a nice structure to that. And in the play-by-post, what I do is I create a channel that is a command channel. So we say the 7th Division command channel, then the 1st Brigade and 2nd Brigade commanders will be part of that. There'll be a 2nd Brigade command channel, and then the battalion commanders in that brigade are in that. So you can't have the division commander talking directly to a battalion commander unless they establish that specific channel. So what I'm mimicking there is the radio communications discipline of a comms officer setting up different frequencies, which would be part of your operations order. And so it really makes actually a nice mechanic that's specific to Kriegsspiel, in that there's a relaying of orders that has to take place from division to brigade down to battalion. And there has to be a clarity of communication such that that channel passes the right information, passes signal and not noise, right? So that what's been very interesting is watching the players simplify their communication so that it gets passed correctly, and I've seen that, and that's been nice. I'm covering a period where radio is just coming into use. And so, for instance, we just did a North African battle where the Italian tanks did not have radios, but the British did, for example. So, as I go deeper in the war, radio becomes more ubiquitous. But that's how I handle radio, and I think it actually adds to the gameplay quite a bit.
Okay, very interesting.
Value.
All right, so let's see. Anybody in the chat got any questions? Please put them in right now. We are hitting our time mark. I do have one, or I guess 2 more questions. But Paul, is there anything very important you wanna add to what you've already discussed?
No, one last point I would make is that umpires, we tend to browse different periods of history and go, okay, I'm going to go try this battle and try it out, and then we develop a game system for it and we run it once. There is value to what Otto has done with his World War II series, and what James has done with his D6 Civil Wars approach, is that when you have a rule set that's your own, that you do multiple battles with, you just improve it and it gets faster and better. And so don't be afraid to develop your own system and just play a lot of different scenarios with it, because you'll find it's actually enjoyable to do that game design process that you mentioned earlier, and improve that for everybody. And that's part of the fun of being an umpire, is watching that come together.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's a very important and encouraging point, I think. And I do love that as well, that almost all our systems are sort of under continuous development. They are always changed, and things are adapted and streamlined and all that. That's a very great aspect of game design, I think, especially in the way we are doing that. Of course, if you're publishing a physical board game or so, well, nowadays there are pages of errata and living rules, how they're called, but usually you just have the printed rule set, and that's it. So that's a great thing we can do with our games. All right, so I guess there is so far no question in the chat. Then my final question would be, what is your biggest takeaway from that game, and what would you potentially do differently if you would run it again?
I think I would. My biggest takeaway is that the open. It's really important to have your commanders in chief briefed ahead of time, and so I was able to give the briefings to the commanders in chief 48 hours ahead of the game, because they agreed that they were going to be there and that they could command. And so what that did is it allowed them to come in with their plans, and that dramatically sped up the gameplay. So I think it can be a standard approach that the CICs of the game are chosen ahead of time. What I would change some small things for the game. I think the game went 9 players, 3 umpires, 13-minute turns, 45-minute setup. It was by the numbers and all that. So I think I might change some small things. What I'm actually interested in is taking this system and growing it into a core level battle. So you get this idea of 30 players can play, but they're each commanding divisions and all the rest. So if anything, my desire to change it is really to grow it. Would be the impulse.
All right, that's great to hear. Okay, well then, thank you for being here today and answering all those questions. Also, thank you to everybody in the chat. And Paul, I guess we are awaiting your after-action report for the Master Umpire Academy, and good luck with the evaluation and the election process that will then commence. And well, everybody have a